Welcome to the Brohoyo podcast, the podcast about gacha in general and Hoyoverse games in specific. I'm your host, Steven, and this is my co host, David.
Hey everyone.
So, this week we're going to be ranking our top 5 and bottom 5 favorite Genshin characters. To really quickly go over the rules, both the top and bottom 5 of our lists have to have at least one 4-star and one 5-star character, and Aloy is not allowed. With that said, Dave, why don't you start us off with your 5th favorite character?
All right, so I had a lot of fun putting this list together. So for my fifth favorite character is going to be Beto. So she is the electric greatsword user, 4-star unit, pirate captain extraordinaire, right? And so for her, the reason she makes this list is she holds a special place in my heart of being one of my first units that I built up and built a team, or as best you can build a team when your roster is very limited. And I did a bunch of content with her in terms of pushing the Archon quests when you're first starting the game. So through Mondstadt and a decent way into Liyue as well. She was a mainstay in my team.
Okay. Yeah, I was in a very similar position as you were first starting out. I think Beto was one of the first characters that I got in the. It was either the standard or the newbie pool. So is it just that special place in your heart that ranks her number 5, or is there anything else about her that help her win
Well,
the slot?
yeah, that's fair. Yeah, there are other things obviously that put her up there too, in terms of I enjoy the gameplay a little bit of her because there is some like counter play and some timing aspects to her E skill that come into effect that you don't necessarily get with other characters, right? The combat in Genshin may not be considered as what maybe other action RPGs would consider as deep, but at least added a little bit of that element. I do like the aesthetic and the pirate aspect of it all. Usually, pirate characters are usually pretty fun. And then when she makes appearances, whether they be in the main story or character stories or even in events, it's usually in a very humorous way, and her dialogue and personality shine through is being nonchalant and having some fun and humor, and then getting serious with her crew or her friends when she needs to be, and then being a overall kind of a badass in that regards. But you have any thoughts on Bido yourself?
I agree. I'm a little bit sad that in some ways the perfect counter aspect of her kit isn't something that we really see anywhere else. It's very niche to her. I also enjoy her as a character. Again, she's fun, she's boisterous. There's a lot of overworked office ladies in Genshin as far as female characters go. So it is nice to see a character that kind of breaks from that mold and does something a little bit different, which Beto definitely does.
And what about you, Steve? For your list, who is going to be your fifth favorite character?
It's another member of Beto's crew. It's Kazuo is my 5th. Similar to you, part of the reason why he's on the list is he's actually the first limited character I pulled for and managed to get. He carried me through Inazuma. He carried me through Liyue. He's been a staple on my team. I pulled him at the time when people were just saying, he's a Sucrose side grade. He's not that worth it. He's not that great. And then, of course, there was that long drought where nobody could get him, and everybody was like, we need Kazuo. We need Kazuo. And so, should have got him when I did. You missed out. But no, I really enjoy him, both from a gameplay point of view and as a character. He's a fun character. I will admit he's a little bit shonen protagonisty for me. It tends to be a bit basic or bland in my eyes, but overall, he's my 5th slot.
Yeah, he came at a time, yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, in the meta, essentially, it was, yeah, he's a Sucrose side grade. He's 5-star Sucrose. And if you already had Venti, which most people did because of Venti's sucking people up being Animo, people were saying to skip him or not pull for him. And then, yeah, we ended up, early impressions changed pretty quick once people actually were able to flesh him out. And he made clearing content, especially with a lot of smaller mobs that can get grouped up and sucked up, very easy to do. And yeah, as far as his personality and his implications in the story, I know he played a pretty fun part, pretty big part in the Inazuma quest line with the Vision quests
Hmm.
and essentially the fight against I, as it were. And I very vividly remember that cutscene of him charging in and everything that's going on, without giving too much away for those that are maybe playing through and haven't yet gotten to Inazuma. A, you're a year behind content and catch up, but B, just to be fair,
Hmm.
that I remember that very vividly being a pretty awesome cutscene.
Yeah, and it also didn't help him that he was coming right before Asuka or I think Asuka's whatever. Her and Raiden were both on the docket. Similarly
Yes,
to Yoimi,
Miko.
Yoimi, no, not Yoimika,
Oh,
Firebow,
Yoimiya. Oh, you're talking
Yoimi,
about 5-star Amber.
yes, 5-star Amber, where just
But
the
somehow more
timing,
peppy. Anyway.
the timing on her was just so bad, and unfortunately, that poor girl has just continued to get bad timing. She's constantly being put up against Archons, whereas Kazuha doesn't quite have that same problem. He tends to run once a year around spring summer, but yeah, just that timing really didn't help because people were looking for a reason not to get him because they knew that they had two big characters
Hmm.
coming up that they were looking for. That didn't help them any, but now I guess we're gonna move to the less fun side of the list. Dave, who is your fifth ranked least favorite character?
So this portion of the list was harder to do because a lot of the characters do have, to me, they're obviously a lot of effort goes into their design and their creation, and a lot of them look really good, even for the 4 stars. So of course, naturally, this is just going to be personal preference for me or personal reason as to why they're here. But my number 5 least favorite character is going to be Barbara.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
And this is maybe a little bit out of left field for some folks because she's generally a very helpful character, very positive personality, and just very sweet and adorable. And the reasoning I put her here, I don't know if anybody remembers, essentially, there's two Barbaras, right? There was the original Barbara, and then they changed her voice actor since some of
Hmm.
the emphasis that she had. And so she wasn't as bubbly. And so when I put Barbara on this list, it's because I'm comparing what she became versus what she originally was in terms of the direction of the voice actor. I really enjoyed the first, what we got in those first few months after the launch of the game in terms of her personality, and her voice lines were a lot more upbeat. And while not necessarily deadpan now, comparatively speaking, they don't hit with that same note of positivity, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see it. I would also, just from a like team building point of view, at this point, Barbara is just such a non-entity for me that, yeah, I could definitely see it.
And and then to shift to the actual gameplay style, I can't tell you how many times, because she's, early on, now maybe not so much, but early on she was one of the few healers in the game that was like a consistent healer. And the downfall, or the one of the pitfalls, I think, is when she uses her ultimate, she makes your character afflicted with the wet status.
Hmm.
And man, when she was still out there, Dragon Spine was newer content, and man, how many times did we get frozen? And it's not even because the enemy's applying wet, it's just because we're doing it to ourselves through her skill. So that's a little clunky in terms of a mechanic when you're trying to explore Dragon Spine or any other ice type area or ice enemies.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can definitely see it. To be fair, the self-applying wet is meant to cleanse you, help cleanse the character of
Yeah.
potential. But yeah, I get the frustration with that.
Yeah, the cleansing, the water cleansing, washing over you, yes, logistically and symbolically, that makes sense. But
Literally from
I
a
get
gameplay point of view, it's supposed
it.
to
Yeah,
trigger vaporize, so you don't take a bunch of damage. That's a zero damage
right.
vaporize vape. But yeah, no, I 100% agree. I understand exactly where you're coming from there.
So how about, okay, so for you now, your fifth least favorite character, where did you start this list?
Chongyun, that is my fifth
Our
least favorite.
ice ghost hunter boy, right?
Yes, and I'm actually surprised that you remembered him because that's part of the reason why he's on my list. He is on my list because he is stale bread and tepid water of the starter 4 stars of the game. I cannot come up with a team that I would ever use him in. He never shows up in the story. He is the appendix of Genshin Impact 1.0. I have zero love for this character. And when he does show up, he is basically showing up to be a friend of some Leeway character. Where they go,
Hmm.
oh, hey, you. It's his hotter older sister that I care about. I am only friends with him and go over to play his crappy Super Nintendo at his house because I get to see his hotter older sister. That is Chung to me.
No, that's a fair take. It's funny because the only reason that I remember him is because of his appearance in some story events, and I don't want to give away any of my future lists of or honorable mentions that we're gonna have later on.
Mhm.
But that is funny that you make that analogy with why I remember him because yeah, as far as storyline stuff or personality, relatively unremarkable. Uh, Compared to a lot of the other characters on the roster, both yeah, from the launch of the game and then the Leowood chapters when he quote unquote got his spotlight, but he wasn't really in the spotlight. Even when between him and Zhang Shu, the bookworm water boy, right? When they both kind of were being featured in an event story, I think Zhang Yun took the back seat, right? Or Chang
Yeah.
Yun, excuse me, took the back seat, and it was our water bookworm friend who was taking the spotlight between the two of them. I forget who they were interacting with in that particular event. That was, I think, 2.5 years ago. To your point of
Yeah.
he's an appendix, that's
Exactly. But having covered that, let's jump up a rank. David, your number four favorite character.
okay. So we're gonna go back to favorites. Okay, good. So we don't want to be too negative for too long. I appreciate that. So jumping into my fourth favorite character, my fourth favorite character is a relatively new addition to the game. Is gonna be Yelan. I was really excited when she was first announced. As a free-to-play player, I did not have the currency at that time to pull for, so I actually had to wait for her rerun before I was able to get her. And then I think at the time too, I think her rerun, she was running with Hu Tao, and I was like, you know what? And I had a Hu Tao,
Mm-hmm.
and so I actually ended up. I think that was one of the first weapon banners I actually pulled on as well, because I was like, either I'm going to get a Staff of Homa or I'm going to get Yelan's main weapon, and I ended up getting Yelan's, which has been wonderful. But to speak to why she made this spot for me, she is like a very much a spy intelligence type espionage character, which I always enjoy a well written or well done spy character. I do have an affinity for the color blue. It's my favorite color. So anybody that's blue or has a water elemental is gonna probably be a few bumps up because of my bias. Because if I always joke, if I had a vision or an element, it would be water as well. So she's up there for those reasons. Gameplay wise, very fun for me to play as. She fits in a lot of different compositions. You can put her into a freeze comp. You can put her into the comp I run her right now. Predominantly, the main team is Nahida, Yaimi, and her is the three rotation characters causing the elemental interactions, and then Zhongli for the shield because I don't like to dodge things. But another nice thing about Yelan too is she makes world exploration a bit quicker because you can press and hold her E and you can run around for that duration of the skill. You're obviously not tethering up enemies because we're not in combat, we're just exploring, but you run at a speed you would run as if you were running, but you're not burning through stamina. And then I have her at E1, and when you get her to E1, you get 2 charges of that. So it makes running distances much easier.
Okay. So I'm going to come clean here. I figured that Yelan was going to be on your list, which is why she is not on mine. I knew that she would get the love and respect that she deserved. I actually skipped her from my list, otherwise she would probably be on here.
And that's a good point, right? We didn't share this list with each other before we were having this conversation. So I'm hearing Steve's list for the first time. He's hearing mine for the first time. We just had that same set of rules we outlined earlier. So Yelan would have made your list, but you know me very well in
Yeah.
my water and blue affinity.
Yeah, I trusted that you would be able to bring her in. I actually thought that she would be higher on your list, if I'm being 100% honest. I'm really shocked that she is in
It is tough.
that
It was
category.
tough for me. There were a lot of factors that went into it, and I was ho and humming a lot of these, but she ultimately fell at 4. But I do really very much enjoy her. as a character, both personality-wise, aesthetically, and in play style. Team fits. But do you have a Yelan on your account as well, or were
Hmm.
you not?
Yeah, I got her the first time around, and then when you ended up getting her and her weapon on that Hutao banner, that was actually the banner that I ended up with a second Staff of Homa and her weapon because I wasn't going to have you have a better Yelan than I had. So I actually pulled for her weapon explicitly because you got her weapon. And I'm like, no, this will not stand. I will not have the inferior Yelan. I have to make sure that she's at least on par with you.
That's an idea for down the road. We should compare units and see who's actually got the better Yelan. Anyway, I'm gonna make a mental note of that. And I want to jump
Uh,
to, and I want to jump to your fourth favorite character.
this is where we get to my obligatory 4-star character. She is her here on her own merits, but Layla is my number 4. She's the ice shielder character from Sumer.
She's the one that likes to take naps, correct?
Yes, she's the one who likes to take
The name.
naps.
Bible animation. But yeah,
Yes, and that's part of it. Is she has some of the best animations in the game, in my opinion. She is just a fun character. I'm not going to pretend that she's meta. I'm not going to pretend that she's a character that's just amazing. To be blunt, Catgirl. I want to say Dahlia, but I know that that's not her name.
are you talking about 4-star cat girl?
4-star Catgirl. Yeah, Ice.
Not Diana. Are you talking about Diana?
Diona, thank you, Diona. For some reason, I had Dahlia, and I'm like, that's not her name, and I can't.
We've been in Genshin long enough now that saying a 4-star cat girl actually still has. If we're playing the Guess Who game, there's still
Yeah,
a few tabs
doesn't
we didn't flip down.
true. Regardless, Diona is probably still the better support character, the better healer, better shielder, etc., like all said and done. But Layla is just a cool character. It's an event that is gone now, but the Pokemon Shroom event where she was a character in really
Mm-hmm.
made me just fall in love with her. And yeah, she's my. Out of all the 4 stars, I decided that she was my favorite, or at least the one that I wanted to put on this list, which I guess is spoilers for what's coming down the line here. But yeah, did you have? Are you even aware of her, or is that is she
I
that's on
am
your?
because of you, so I
Okay.
should have known she was gonna be in consideration. I didn't know if you were gonna put her on the list or if you were gonna put her in maybe one of your honorable mention slots. 'Cause, yeah, you mentioned go check out her idol animations when you pulled her. 'Cause I think pulled on a similar banner that had been a 4-star on, and I agree. I think she had absolutely adorable idol animations and like the falling asleep, taking a nap, and the bubbles and everything. I think I've only partially built her maybe to level 50 or 60, whatever odd ascension it is, so that I can get another pull ticket, right? But yeah, she doesn't have any spots on the team, as there's very few 4-stars that do. But like you said, it's if there's a character that resonates with you for whatever reason, have fun with it. By all means, go for it.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, we are leaving the happy zone and we're going back to the sad zone. Dave, fourth worst.
The yin and yang balance. So here we go to the least favorite characters. This is a potentially controversial pick because I think she's relatively well liked, but it's gonna be Amber.
Okay. Okay.
I, as far as Amber goes, and this isn't a shot at her personality or her being like the first character you're essentially introduced to, being your guide through Mondstadt and a lot of the tutorials. If I'm being honest, the main reason she made the list of my least favorite characters isn't because of her herself. It's because she's forced onto your team, and if she's not in your team, you're forced to switch to her a lot for puzzles that require a pyro user,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically a pyro ranged user. I'm not a fan of when Genshin forces us to do puzzles with very specific elements
Mm-hmm.
and specific weapon users of elements, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of puzzles early on in the game that required you to not only have a pyro character, but have a pyro character that could shoot from a distance because it was timed or because it was up on a ledge balcony you couldn't get to. So if you had a Bennett, if you had a Diluc, which were the fire pyro
Mm-hmm.
characters early on in the game, they weren't getting the job done for some of these puzzles, and you had to put Amber in because as a character, Amber is not a very strong character. Personality-wise, I don't have anything against her or her silliness or lightheartedness in any cutscenes or story events or events or side events, right? It's predominantly she's forced into your team early on because of those puzzles. Now we
Okay.
have moved on from that and our roster has expanded, but even when I've been going back and exploring Sumeru because I haven't done a lot of the desert, there are things that require fire bow and arrow users. And while I don't have a Yoimiya, therefore Amber's being slotted in as that character because it's forced to be done that way.
At the risk of maybe spoiling your future list, but that it's the Colette problem is really where that came to a head for me. Was when you first hit Sumeru, you only had Colette as a Dendro user and a bow user as well. And some of those Dendro puzzles and domains that required Dendro were just a pain in the butt.
Yes, that
Yeah.
did happen early on in Sumeru as well, with them giving us Colette. I just have Amber here because that was the first time it happened, and it's when you're taking in the game for the first
Mm-hmm.
time. So you're taking note of all these things, both the good and the bad experiences, because you're still in that, am I going to continue to play this game mode? You're still in that phase of trying to figure out, am I going to stick with this game? And you're not necessarily sold on it yet. And to me, it was a negative. Now, obviously, ultimately, I've stuck with the game. It was a relatively minor thing. I was able to overcome it. But that's why she's there. It's not because I hate her personality or her aesthetics or anything like that. It's purely because she was forced into your team, even when you didn't want her in your team if you had other Pyro users. Jumping now from my fourth least favorite character, Steve, your fourth least favorite character.
Gorao? Gyro? I can never pronounce his name. It's the Earth Fox or Earth Dog bow user from
Yeah,
Yakuza.
Goro, a four-star Geo character
Yeah.
who plants a flag, I think, when you use his skill, right? And then when he uses his ultimate, the flag follows him around, effectively buffing, I think, other Geo users.
Yeah, and he's a dual threat on this list. I both
Okay.
dislike his character, not a whole lot. He's not awful. Again, for this list, he's in fourth for a reason. He's not the worst character, but I really don't like his yes man to Kokomi role. I just don't find him in a compelling character. And then from a Kit point of view, he exists solely to allow Mono Geo to exist,
Yep. Yep.
and I don't let it. I don't have a problem with Mono Geo. I'd actually like to run a Mono Geo team at some point if that ever comes back into vogue, but he's just not. He's the linchpin to that team, and he's not a character I enjoy or like. He's completely useless outside of it. He is just sitting on my account, leaving me going, "Why are you here, you waste of space?" Which is a little bit mean. Again, I know that there are people out there who really like that character, but for me, I just the only good thing I have to say about him is I was able to get 3 standard pulls from leveling him up.
Yeah, when you first mentioned him right here as being your fourth least favorite character, that was my initial thought was, what teams is he in? Oh yeah, that's right, but only the Mono Geo team,
Mm-hmm.
which I couldn't even fully build out because I didn't have. I was like, I didn't have the fourth Geo, and I didn't have
Yeah.
Albedo, which is the crux of that team.
Or Ito.
I
If you
think,
don't have Ito, it's
and
just not worth
I
running.
didn't have Arataki Ito either. I didn't because I did not pull for him. But yeah, and the other thing too with being a bow user, it's bow users are a little bit more difficult. I feel in this game to actually have, and him being a
Yeah.
supporter, that's fine. But if you have to have him out on the field for whatever reason, it's not like he hits very hard for auto attacks and charge
Yeah.
shots. For bow users, you either have your charge shot monsters like Ganyu, or you have your rapid fire Yoimiya EA Lon types.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not meant to be a DPS. He's meant to be the
Yeah.
support. Like you said, he's the enabler of your big Geo hitters in that team, like Arataki Ito or Albedo kind of was with having all the different Geo constructs out there.
Exactly.
Okay.
He's just like I said. He supports a team play style that I don't like, or not don't have the opportunity to like, and he's just again from a character point of view, he annoys and frustrates me. But having said all that,
Let's get back to positive side.
yeah, let's get back to positives.
All right.
Third place positive, Dave.
My third favorite character is going to be Eula.
Okay.
So yeah, so she is a cryo greatsword user, and actually I have a very nice mouse pad that is, I think it's just some fan art of her, and it's very, she is, for those Spy Family, she very elegante, right? I always thought she was extremely elegant in terms of her appearance, her attack animations. It's the almost dancing-esque
Hmm.
in how she attacks with the great sword. Just it looks all very fluid to me. And I know there was a lot of controversy and she got a lot of hate when she was first announced because of her family lineage. But then, of course, you actually learn how she feels about that family lineage, and she's trying to stand out and make the family name better and distance herself from that reputation because she doesn't agree with what her family did. Yet she still caught hate from people. So I think all that combined puts her on this list for me. She
Yeah.
was one of the first characters I really tried out multiple teams with and was trying to have her be the main focal point. And I ended up on a team for like her and Raiden Shogun. Um, as far as their elemental interactions, because Electro and Cryo shreds enemy defense, and then I built her as trying to capitalize on physical defense, and then I tried maybe building her with Cryo damage, and on just
Hmm.
depending on circumstances. But yeah, so she's gonna be my third favorite character. Again, just aesthetically has the blue aesthetic. Again, it's a lighter blue, right? It's not
Hmm.
like a dark blue like Yelan's is. Just the way she maneuvers the great sword, again, very elegant to me. And then again, just how she was portrayed as this family noble and this bigot type thing, and the whole
Hmm.
slavery that her family, I think, had. But she, again, it wasn't like that. She is estranged from her family because of that type thing. And then being part of the Favonius Knights and working with Jean to try and, she's like the almost like the Dark Knight of the Favonius Knights, as it were, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
that she's, and not vigilante like Batman is, but in terms of acceptance by the general public,
Hmm.
she's not 100% loved necessarily.
Yeah. It's also a little bit weird because at least within the universe, the Lawrence family, which I believe is the family that
Mhm.
she comes from, like
Yep.
they're over 100 years out from when all that went down. Like it was not a recent event that occurred. That was a
Yeah,
while
she's not.
ago.
It's not like she's paying for her parents' mistake. She's
Yeah.
like paying for her parents' mistake, and that's a lot of generations to hold the
Yeah.
grudge.
Admittedly, every member of the Lawrence family we see is a d bag, but other
Yeah.
than her. But yeah, I would 100% agree also on her animations. Her attack combo is great. It's amazing. It is just a shame that Genshin hasn't been really supporting physical as a damage type. But no, I'm not going to say I'm surprised. Let's just put it that way. That Eula's where she is on the list at this point.
And then how about you for you? Who is taking your number three favorite spot?
My number three is Nahida, and we're getting to the point where it was real close. Like where there are hair differences between third and first. But yeah, Nahida is my number three. The Sumeru storyline hit me real hard because of her. She's a great character. I the screen time that she got, she used well. They used well for her. She's a powerful character. I'm not gonna lie. I C2'd her. Got very lucky when I C2'd her, but or yeah, it's Constellation's not Elon, so
Yeah, we're
gotta
in
get those
Genshin
two.
World, not not
Yeah,
Star Rail. We're in Genshin. Yep.
got her second constellation when she first came around. I didn't actually get her weapon because I didn't figure, based off of what I had in my arsenal, that was really necessary. The C2 was a bigger jump. But no, I have more trouble creating teams that don't have Nahida in it than I have teams creating teams with her. She just goes in perfectly for any time that you want to splash Dendro. She's amazing. She is my number three.
She is, yeah, she's a for combat purposes, she's a great applier of Dendro. As you said before, the logic that you said this back when Zhongli came out, and I think it's like they're not going to make a weak Archon unit, and so that's why I pulled for her when she was originally launched. I didn't take your advice for Farina, but we're not talking about her right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nahida, I agree. I think her in the story, the screen time, and kind of the things that she's dealing with. I mean, like, oh, it's this childish god, like very immature god, but then you learn why that is, and as you peel back the layers and you get more revealed to you as the viewer, she becomes a more complex character, and you become more understanding of why she is the way she is. And then, yeah, her interaction towards the end of that Sumeru arc, and her conversations with you, the player character, and then with the doctor, and everything that comes from that. Just, yeah, very well done. She's in my current team as well. She's my Dendro applier for Yelan and Yaimiko to elementally react off of. And the only thing that drives me nuts is farming her materials. I still haven't gotten her talents to level 10 yet because I must be doing something wrong, and maybe you can help me out. Maybe some other players, maybe somebody who plays can let me know how to more reliably farm the materials that you need from the world enemies that there are, because you have to like kill the mushroom things, but
So
kill them with specific elements.
yes, I can actually tell you exactly what you need to do. When you're farming
Please
them,
do.
pull out any Electro or Pyro characters. Because any Pyro or Electro character will get you the opposite drop of what you need. You need to defeat them with nothing but Hydro, Pyro, or sorry, Hydro, Dendro, and or Geo. Those are
Okay.
the
I'll
elements you
have to
can use.
go more specifically build and test that, because I could have swore I was killing with Electro because I run Yaimiko in the team, but I keep getting the inactivated ones. Like, so it's like they're just normal. They're not charged one element or the other.
If I remember correctly, you don't want Electro, is the problem.
Oh, well then that's my, yeah, if that's
Yeah.
my problem, then I just completely misunderstood. So I need to put a pyro unit in. Maybe I'll go in and
No,
try
no
and
pyro, no electro.
no,
Neither
no
of those
pyro
two.
or
No
electro.
pyro or electro. Do
What the
think
hell do I need, Steve?
you need anything but those two.
Anything
Um,
but those.
bring Eula. Bring your Eula team without any pyro or electro. Just bring an ice physical team or a
Okay.
hydro team, like a bloom team, something like that.
Can I bring? So can I? So but I can't bring my freeze team. Like I can't bring my Mona Ganyu Shenhe team
Yeah, you can because
because
those
that's
are
water. I'm safe with water.
you're safe with water. The only two
Okay.
elements you can't use are electro and pyro because those
Which are
burn or
both staples in my two main teams. So this
yeah.
explains everything. I feel stupid, but thank you for clarifying
No
that.
problem. As someone who ran into that exact problem, I understand. If I had known you'd had this issue
I,
earlier, I would have
I've been
let you
sitting
know.
here for months just completely misunderstanding the farming guides and everything. I was like, aren't I doing this right? I feel stupid, but hopefully my stupidity, learn from it, everybody. If you've also been having trouble farming, learn from it. It's okay.
Yeah, she has unique mats because of that. But moving on, let's get back into the bad. Dave,
Okay.
you're number
So we're looking
three.
at number three, least favorite character. It's funny considering that I had Baidu or Beidou, excuse me, as my fifth favorite character, because somebody relatively similar to her in terms of play, Razor is going to be my third least favorite character. Yeah, so for Razor being my third least favorite character, I just uh, personality just doesn't resonate with me. The talking like a dog because you were raised by wolves. Well, I get it, canon for his background and upbringing. It's just very hard to listen to for extended periods of time. And then again, his playstyle is similar to Beto a little bit, or they fill a relatively same role
Hmm.
in terms of being electro and great sword users. So he just never really had a spot for me. But yeah, so that's why he falls here as on my least favorite character list as number three, because I didn't really have a use for him with Beto being there, and I just listening to him talk like somebody trying, like an adult trying to learn words for the first time. It's just it's tough. It's tough to get through. But again,
Yeah.
canonically, if that's a word, I understand because he was raised by wolves. I get it. It's just not for me.
Yeah, fair enough. About the only thing that I think saves him is his stand. I want more characters that have his style stand as part of their kit, but
Oh, in terms of like having like when he
yeah,
ults, he has his wolf with him.
yeah, his Lupercal, I think is what it's called. His big wolf spirit that attacks with him. I wish more characters had that aesthetic, but everything else I agree with you. He's meh.
And how about for you, your third least favorite character? Who's made the podium in your least favorite characters?
Farzan, the Animo Sumero bow user, The reason why she is on this is, again, I'm not a fan of her character, or I'm 1,000 years old, but a young woman shtick, where she's constantly reminding you that, oh yeah, I'm actually 1,000 years old. That doesn't sit well with me, but really what bothers me is the fact that her entire kit is functionally locked behind Constellation 6. She might as well not be a character until you unlock Constellation 6. And even when you do, her main job is to support either Wander or Zhao. Support an Animo DPS. That is her job, and you have to get 6 copies of her, which could cost potentially thousands of dollars to get. Yeah, she's just.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee on a 4-star either. So yeah, that.
So yeah, she just does not belong here. She is my third place worst character, and I stand by that, if only for policy reasons.
Yeah, I don't have too much of an opinion on her. Because to me, again, it goes back to what I mentioned when we were talking about bow users and Goru. Unless they are going to be a quick shot or they're going to be a charge shot monster like Gon is, I can't get behind bow users play style as a support. So, and then personality wise, she hasn't been in too many events. I think she was in a Sumeru event. I think it might have been that same one where you fell in love with Layla when you're going out and
Yeah.
exploring different regions. But I, she didn't stand out to me. To your point, nothing like there wasn't anything. Oh my goodness, yeah, this character is like great personality, or oh man, you know, whatever that attracts me to them. It was so there's just like you. It's like it's another character I'm leveling up to get the standard banner pulls, and that's about it. Especially because, like you mentioned, she doesn't really fully gameplay wise changes unlocks at C6, and I don't have her at C6. And then she also supports characters that I do not have on my account, being the Wanderer, being Zhao. I can't build a team around units I don't have.
Exactly. But again, we're out of the negative. We're going back to the good. Your silver medalist.
All right, so my second favorite character, and again, a lot of these, similar to you with my top three, and even Yelan at four, were very difficult to delineate between. But for number two, my second favorite character is going to be Navia.
Okay.
I absolutely, from the moment I saw her in the drip marketing to when I saw what her kit was going to be and I saw her animations, I love the character. I know Geo's not in fashion right now necessarily, but I like the umbrella gun. It gave me vibes from the name of the movie's slipping me right now. The Kingsman.
Ah,
Gave me very much Kingsman vibes in terms of the umbrella gun type thing. The fact that her Q is just like a bombardment of cannon fire is absolutely hilarious to me. The idle animations whipping out the sunglasses, and then the way even in her auto attack animations kicking the sword and it's spinning around, and then she hops up in the air, it kind of pops open the parasol real quick and comes down. I really liked everything about it. I was a little upset that I did not get her weapon when her banner came out. I lost that, unfortunately, 2 times. I didn't hit,
yeah.
and I didn't have enough for the epitomized path. Let that be a lesson, kids, about weapon banners in Genshin. But yeah, so she's in one of my main teams that I run right now. So it's Bennett, it's her, Bennett, Zhongli, and then Guoba. I'm really sorry, I'm forgetting her name at the moment.
You're good.
Yeah, our 4-star cooking pyro fiend. But those are going to be the team that I run with her. And I know a lot of teams, elemental reactions, we get damage per second in the elemental reactions. But there is something incredibly satisfying about seeing a really large number and having that damage per screenshot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing her hit for 6 digits. It's and just very satisfying to me off of her E skill. But
I'm noticing a theme of damage per screenshots here.
yeah,
Eula,
that's true. Eula does have a
yeah.
damage per screenshot with her big ult right off of E. Yelan doesn't, though, to be fair.
I don't know. I've
And
seen some big numbers off of Yelan, but
her bit, as opposed to damage per screenshot, she's more of a damage per second, right? In that
true,
because
true.
it's multiple auto attacks, and you have the white damage, and then you have the hydro damage, and those are separate procs, right? It's not one giant number combined. So I'll defend myself a little bit against that slander, but no, I get what you're saying. But yeah, absolutely love Navia. Everything about her. I like I said, I wish I had her signature weapon because it looked cool. It was an
Mhm.
axe and looked really cool. But I'm gonna stop gushing about her. What are your thoughts on Navia? How do you feel? Where on the spectrum is she for you?
Unfortunately, she can't escape the shadow of me having her weapon and not Mist Splitter. Regardless, I do agree she's an amazing character. I'm not quite as sold on her as you are. I'm going to be honest. The main reason I got her was I got her signature instead of Mist Splitter, and it was a I guess I'm getting her now.
Yeah, yeah, funny story. You wanted the Miss Splitter, got her weapon. I wanted her weapon, I got Miss Splitter twice. So that was not ideal. But
Yeah, I got a generic 5-star sword, and then I got her weapon. Wasn't great, but regardless,
okay. So who is your runner-up on the favorite category?
Kokomi is my silver amethyst.
Okay.
She is a character who has grown on me, much like Moss or a
This is
Sir.
surprising.
I'm gonna be honest. I really thought about this one. I struggled with whether she was going to be on the list at all, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized Kokomi has been there for me through thick and thin. Kokomi is the one who, when I was down, was there to pick me up again. She healed me through some of the toughest boss fights. Despite the fact that I did not want her in my life, she
That
forced her way in and has continued to keep me wet this entire time. Yeah, and to be honest, I don't hate her character. I just I made a mistake and it was a happy little accident.
I am
Don't build pity kids, but
I am
sometimes it works
pleasantly
out.
surprised she's on your list.
Yeah, I could not in good conscience keep her off of it. Again, she has a great
And
animation. Again, I do enjoy her character, but oh boy. Oh, there was a lot of work in that relationship.
I will not go into the specifics. I'll leave that to you if you wish to share that. But I do remember the day after you pulled for her and got her, and I remember your sentiment in the moment at the time, how you were feeling. And so to see her on this list, taking your runner-up as favorite character, I am pleasantly surprised. I do not have a Kokomi. But yeah, she is a pure, true, dedicated healer. Enables a lot of fun mechanics and a lot of hydro applications. But yeah, I'm pleasantly pleased to see her on your list, considering where your relationship with her started.
Yeah, because again, I think I've mentioned in the past before when Kokomi was first released, everybody agreed that she was a garbage character. That she has a passive that gives her a negative 100% chance to crit, which means she cannot crit. In exchange, she gets a bunch of healing buffs. So she is a healer in a game where healing was not optimal. Shielding was the best route, and then now healing's come back, but even before then wasn't super great. And I was building pity because I forget what the 4-star was on her banner that I was trying to build pity with. And she came home early. I think she hit at 40 or 50, which is usually where I stop building pity. But she came home early, and I remember just sitting there going, oh my god, I've just completely wasted my 50-50. What happened here? And then, if I remember correctly, for that, she's been my main. I'm a Kokomi main from that point
Yeah, when
forward
we get the anniversary
every year
stats, she is on your most used team every time.
because she can just heal through anything. She's unkillable. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie and say that we started out at a great point. I was very down on her, but looking back, happy little accident.
That is, that's great. That's funny. All right. So
So,
I think now it's time to jump to my runner-up for the least favorite character.
yep.
So we had talked about we have to have at least one five-star character on each list and at least
Mm-hmm.
one four-star character. And if we've been doing the math, my five-star character hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen here. And so I'm gonna check that box to at least have the one, right? We may have
Mm-hmm.
a second one at number one, but for number two, least favorite character, Arataki Ito.
Okay.
Uh, I just I don't I, he just doesn't click or resonate with me. They play him as his personality to be too stupid
Hmm.
almost in instances. And I can take some level of the anime protagonist being very dense and
Hmm.
just very oblivious to things. But even that has a point, and it's with him, they are almost crossing that over. And it stinks too because they predominantly feature him in some event stories that are actually like
Yeah.
fun events. I enjoy the Beetle Battler. I that's lighthearted, silly, and a fun game, mini game to play. But it features Ito every time they've run it thus far. I'm just like, not so much for me. Gameplay style, he fits into that mono Geo team. Yes, there's other variations of things you can run him in, but he would be a big damager in that type of
Hmm.
team setup, and that's not really for me. And I already have in Eula, who's on my other side of the spectrum of a favorite character, right? Already have that big great sword user who's out there punishing people and doing physical damage on top of some of your element, in his case Geo, in her case Cryo, right? For me, he's going to be number 2 on my list. So yeah, it was funny when you had mentioned Goro earlier, and I was like, I don't want to give anything away for what's coming up for me.
I get it. I really do. I think since his release, almost every event that's been in Inazuma has featured him. And if his personality does not mesh with you, that has to be just very frustrating.
It's a little grating sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I will leave it at that.
All right, so who is going to be on your second place position for least favorite character?
In many ways, we do think alike because my second place least favorite is another 5 star as well. It is Tignari. Leaving aside real world issues with the character,
Voice actor, yeah, we'll leave that
yeah,
out. Yeah.
leaving that out, at least the English one. The My issue with him is that he is my Chi-Chi. I have a C3 Tignari, and I don't even use the character. I don't like him. He's a bow user. 3 of the characters on my least favorite so far have been bow users. I am not a fan of bow users. He is a bow dendro, which means he directly competes with Nahida, and Nahida does his job 1,000 times better. He is completely worthless for my account, and I have a C3 version of him. Just get out. Go away. Go away.
That's funny you mentioned the bow users. I was just looking at my list and it's like, oh, my least favorite characters. I'm not going to give away who my least favorite character is
Yeah.
yet, but I was looking at that thus far, and my favorite characters are 3 of them are great swords. No, 4 of them.
Yeah.
No, 3 of them. Yeah, 3 of them are great swords that I've shown so far, and then on my least favorite characters, 2 of them are great swords that I've shown so far. So it's funny. I have the great sword affinity or really don't like it, and you got the bows that you really don't like.
Yeah. That's it. I don't want to spend too much time beating down on him,
Yeah.
but he just is
No.
not to my
Yeah,
taste.
I do not have a Tainari. He was not a character that was interesting to me. And as far as like a Dendro applier, we knew Nahida was around the corners.
I've been
Hold
getting
on
him
for
on
that.
lost 50/50s. I lose a
I had
50/50, and there he
completely
is.
forgotten he was on the standard
There
banner,
he is.
to be honest. So, all right. So it's time to shift to. I do want to throw a curveball because I don't want to end this on a negative. So
Okay.
instead of going to our favorite character, we'll end on our high notes. Let's go ahead and go with my least favorite character in the game. So I'll call an audible there because I don't want to end on the low note. I want
I'll
to end
allow
on
it.
the high notes.
I'll allow it.
Okay. So for my least favorite character in the game, I'm just gonna quick cut to the chase. Sayu. She is the little ninja armadillo roll around greatsword animo user. She's a 4-star unit. She's got a roly poly mechanic, which can be silly and fun.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest. The main reason that I do not enjoy her, and this could potentially ruffle some feathers, is every voice actor in the game is a relatively unknown person in terms of stream streaming or content creation,
Hmm.
right? They once they're in Genshin, maybe they capitalize on that and they're all very good in their own rights. They're famous from other games that they're in.
Hmm.
So I guess let me rephrase this. It's not that they're not famous, it's that they're not known for something other than voice. Sayu's English voice actor is Lily Pichu, who she's a content creator, she's a streamer, she's actually part of an online gaming org that I like most of the members in that one. Unfortunately, her voice is very grating to me. Like she's a very sweet, nice person.
Hmm.
She's musically very gifted, but her voice is just very grating to me. And the fact that she is the English voice actor, and I can't dissociate the character from her voice. It's nails on a chalkboard, unfortunately. And
Okay.
I apologize again because I feel bad, even though she's my least favorite character, and it's for that reason I feel bad because at the end of the day, like I said, I think Lily Pichu is a very nice individual from what I've seen of her and what I can gather in that group. But all these other voice actors, like I said, they are known for being voice actors, and it's
Hmm.
my understanding that I don't know if she had done any other voice acting. If she had, I'm not aware of it. But all these other voice actors on the English side, they've done some other projects that
Hmm.
I maybe recognize them from, or I was like, man, his voice sounds familiar. Let me go back and see what he's done. Oh, he was this character in Mass Effect, or oh, he
Hmm.
was this character in this anime type thing. So that's gonna be why Sayu is my least favorite character, and on principle, I have not built her at all.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't
Sorry,
have
Lily.
any. I have no strong feelings one way or the other on Sayu. I'm actually surprised that's your bottom pick, but
Yeah.
you don't like what you don't like.
And your least favorite character, who takes the crown on this side of the spectrum for you?
My least favorite character is Maynard, and I call him Maynard because his name in when you draw for him is the Wanderer, but they gave us the ability to name him, and I named him Maynard because I don't like Maynard. Maynard
Wanderer. Okay.
is a annoying character. He's my least favorite part of Sumeru. He is, in my opinion, a character who is functionally irredeemable, and he should not have been playable. Bring back the Crimson Witch. I would have rather had her as a playable character than Maynard. Maynard sucks. I don't like Maynard.
The Wanderer. Yeah, he had an interesting kit with like being able to hover around and stuff. I haven't renamed him because I have trouble naming characters in my RPGs in games in my protagonist. So I just left him as the Wanderer. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. But yeah, his villain arc and then redemption story.
I just
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I know we got a lot of other things we want to get to here.
so
So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
yeah. Let's move on to number one goodness.
All right. So favorite character. I have a suspicion of who your number one is, but for me, my number one character, and again, this was all very difficult to come down to. There, we'll get some honorable mentions in here too. But for my favorite character, Yai Miko. She is gonna
Okay.
be my favorite character, and there's a number of different reasons for that. One, and in no particular order, for reasons that she's my favorite character, I do really enjoy her playstyle. The idea of throwing down a totem and then teleporting away from it adds an extra little positioning level of strategy to combat that's relatively brain dead, relatively speaking. There's obviously some complexity to it, but not when you compare it to other action RPGs like Punching Great Raven or upcoming Withering Waves that we've seen, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it just looks really smooth, like her just sliding away, disappearing, and then reappearing very briefly. And then her cutscene when you use her ultimate ability, just with the Fox Shadow and everything, all very cool. Calling down lightning, that was just a very cool concept.
Mm-hmm.
Aesthetically speaking, she's absolutely beautiful character. Her design, everything about her, like her little idle animations, and she holds her hand in a little fox using her index finger and her
Yeah.
pinky as little fox ears. I thought that was a very small but very nice touch to what her whole thing is. And then whenever she appears, whether it be in the story, and then even I can start in the main story when she appears in like her relationship with Raiden Shogun and I as
Mm-hmm.
well across the time that they've been friends, it was just very powerful and res in terms of her, like to me in terms of her
Mm-hmm.
role in affecting that evolution and that change in Inazuma, and then also kind of in the side events or the side stories that she's been in, whether it be the book publishing stuff or whether it be she was in the I think that Pokemon battle one that was in Sumeru. She's a very like very intelligent character, very smart, and knows everything that's going on essentially type thing, but she doesn't let on about it, and thus gets very like sarcastic with some of her responses, or very she'll drop big hints at things but won't outright say stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Yoi Miko, for all those reasons, is gonna be my favorite character in the game.
Okay. I'm gonna be honest. If I hadn't had that four-star restriction put in place, she probably would have been on my list as well. Probably a little, obviously higher, but yeah, she definitely would have been on there. I also enjoy the bird idle animation between her and Raiden, where with Raiden the bird lands and Raiden peacefully sends it off, and then when it lands on Yai, it gets 8. I'm a little surprised. I was not expecting Yai to be your A number 1, but you know,
Let's hear your one.
yeah.
Let's see if you surprise me here, because I have my inclination that I think it is. But go ahead.
You know what? It's Klee. I knew you weren't going to be shocked by it. I was tempted to ask, "What do you think it is?" No, it's Klee. Klee is my favorite character. She is just a cute, bubbly character. I'll be honest, her joke of it's a little girl that can blow up mountains with explosives never gets old for me. I The only thing I hope for is that someday Mihoyo or not Brohoyo. God, I can't even remember. Hoyoverse.
Hoyoverse.
There we go. They change their names so much, and I keep on getting caught up on it. That Hoyoverse eventually gets around to maybe doing something to help bring older characters back in
The
line.
relevance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back to relevance, back in line. Just some small tweaks to help make her a little bit more usable. But no, she's my daughter Fu. She's my favorite.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, she's very cute, very adorable, and with her Humpty Dumpty or her the bombs that
Jumpy
she does.
Dumpties.
Jumpy Dumpties. Thank you. Yeah, gameplay wise, yeah, a little clunky in terms of her game wise, but yeah, I remember on launch her being pretty fun, the character that people really enjoy playing, and yeah, man, that's she's adorable, and we get to generally see her every summer during the Archipelago Isle stuff. So hopefully she'll have a role in this upcoming summer event, so you can see her again, or if she reruns, if you're interested in pulling for her again. Now, obviously, it's very difficult to fit 5 characters and 5 characters only in the large roster. So I did want to take a quick minute for some honorable mentions of some of our favorite characters that didn't make the list. So just quick hitters. So for me, I just wanted to do 3 quick hitters. Honorable mentions: Jean, and these are in no
Mhm.
particular order for honorable mention. Jean being my first 5-star character I ever pulled, so she had a mainstay in my team for a long time. Also, she made the tower defense events when it first came out very easy, because you could just suck up people and then push them off the ledge. They don't allow that so much anymore, but for the first one, it's awesome. Second honorable mention: Hu Tao, my first limited 5-star character. Built a roster around her. A lot of fun, adorable. Plus, the idea of her going and selling coffins to people that are still alive is hysterical to me. You're gonna die eventually. You should buy this coffin. Come on. And then lastly, honorable mention: Raiden Shogun.
Okay.
I think it's enough said why everybody loves Raiden Shogun in terms of her aesthetic and play style and just being an Archon and an ultimate badass. How about you, Steve? Honorable mentions for you.
Okay. I really only have one that you didn't include, and then I've got a minor note that I'd like to end on.
Sure.
So, my sole honorable mention here would be Ayaka. She's a wonderful character. She was much hyped when she came out. She was great. She is great. I love her character. I wish that she had some better costumes in comparison to what she got. I'm not a fan of the summer type dress thing that they gave her, but overall, I enjoy her quite a bit. The kind of note that I want to end on or talk about is I know that for some people out there, they're probably wondering about our bottom tiers, that there are 2 big names that aren't listed, and those are Xinyan and Dea. And the reason why I think both of us agreed not to put them on the list is that we don't actually dislike those 2 characters. Maybe from a gameplay perspective, they're bad. They're probably the 2 worst in the game. But just as characters, I don't think either of us had the heart to do that to them. Now, I know that we mentioned that we didn't share that knowledge ahead of time. Both of us had mentioned that we did not choose Dea ahead of time. A little bit of low hanging fruit, a little bit of punching down. Nope, just we love those 2, those Dea mains out there. Keep on trucking.
Yeah, so I like to add on to Steve's point. Yeah, Xinyan and Dea didn't include them in the list for me. Xinyan, while functionally not necessarily a great character at all to have in your party or build around, the Southern accent voice actor for the English side doesn't bother me. I find it absolutely hysterical that she's rock and roll, but got that country twang going on in a Chinese produced game is hilarious to me. And then for Deha, again, the character herself and the aesthetic herself I actually really liked. Just, yeah, I understand there's controversy around when she came out in terms of how powerful or lack thereof that she was, and then also the bait of here's her limited banner. Oh, by the way, she's going on the standard banner to ruffled some feathers. So didn't include her on either list for those reasons because again it was pretty obvious and felt like beating a dead horse in terms of reasons we wouldn't like them because the reasons we don't like her has already been massively discussed by the community at the time of her launch. So that's gonna wrap it up for our discussion here. Now, obviously, we have a lot of news to talk about that I want to shift into. So we have a new character launch this weekend with Genshin with Arlecchino, and then I know we also want to discuss some other gotcha news going on with some pre-registrations and other things popping up in Apple stores. Looking at you, Zenless Zone Zero, and Wuthering Waves, and then also some big events with the Nikkei 1.5 year anniversary. So let's jump into that next. So getting into new characters this week in Genshin, we had Arlecchino drop, who is a Pyro character. Father, is I think as we've been referring to her in the storyline with in recent news with Fontaine, but she's got an interesting mechanic in terms of how she scales harder and not necessarily being able to be healed per se during combat. But Steve, I'm gonna let you jump in because I believe you pulled for her. So what was your experience pulling for her? And what's it been like playing around with her? How developed have you made her, and what team are you running with her?
She is very much so still a work in progress for me. Part of that is because I had to continue the story of this patch in order to get access to the boss that you need in order to get the materials for her. And I still don't have her high level talent materials. But regardless, she's definitely an interesting character. I was already at the. I was at 60 pulls, 70 pulls going into this event or this banner, and she came home immediately, which was great. Played around with her, found that I really enjoyed her playstyle, got a wild hair and tried for her C and just didn't hit it. I actually got Tignari'd again. You know, that might have been part of the reason why he scored so high in the last section,
Oh,
but
is that why he's on the list? Because of
might have
that
been a little bit
recency?
of
Okay.
business there, but I stand by everything I said about him. Regardless, she's definitely an interesting character. I will say that I misread her talents at first and thought that she was an HP scaler. She is not an HP scaler. She is definitely an attack scaler. So keep that in mind. I know that there are other better guides out there than probably what I'm going to cover here real quick, but her mechanic is essentially you use her skill, she marks an AoE group of enemies with Bond of Life. You have to let that bond mature by giving it 5 seconds, and then when she does a charge attack, she will remove that bond from an enemy and it'll apply the Bond of Life effect to her up to 200% of her HP, which is a bit moot. It doesn't really matter because every time she attacks, she loses 7.5% of that Bond of Life, so it's functionally just a ticker. It being tied to her HP means nothing. The only thing it affects is that if you heal her, you can heal it off. It's basically a debt of healing that you have to do. But since you're not going to be using a healer with her anyways, because she needs to have a high bond of debt or bond of life with her, it doesn't really come into effect. It's a bit odd if I'm being 100% honest. But no, she is fun. Anyone who says that she's power creeping Hu Tao, I would strongly disagree. They do have very different play styles. Hu Tao is much more fire and forget in some senses, where you basically use her skill and then proceed to just charge attack and charge attack, maybe with some jumps in there if you want to get fancy in order to move cancel or
Animation cancel, yeah.
animation cancel. But other than that, how should I put this? Arlecchino is very fun. I could see how she is comparable to Hu Tao, but she's definitely not Hu Tao. She does equivalent damage, I would say, if not better, depending on the scenario. I would point out that, and this is pure speculation on my part, but we are nearing the end of patch area cycle of Genshin, and I am suspecting that this Bond of Life mechanic is going to be much more heavily used and included going into 5.0 and on, just because we're getting to the point to where we're going to be seeing mechanics that are going to show up in the Pyro Nation. That's coming up not long. Typically, when we get near to the end of the patch, you start seeing characters that are being designed with the future in mind. Looking at Yaimiko, to a lesser degree Dea, and others. She might, big question mark, might have some future use or future interactions that we are unaware of. But at the moment, she's a nice, fun character, decent for her solo. She can kind of slot in wherever. For me, it's a Yelan with Zhongli and then a flex spot for whoever, and run her like that. Having covered Arlecchino, let's kick it back to you, Dave, for the rest of what's going on this week.
Yeah. Moving to news outside of Genshin, I definitely wanted to hit on the big news that I was excited for this week, which was Nikkei, Goddess of Victory, celebrating their year and a half anniversary this week. So with that comes a brand new event, Lost Kingdom, which has its own unique map that you can travel to find like little hidden objectives, fun new like tower defense mini game they have going on with that. New character Crown, who is a burst 2 supporter unit, who she's in the Pilgrim class. So in terms of manufacturer, she's a Pilgrim, and I think is going to be in the meta for that, help you with that Pilgrim Tower for the manufacturer tower climb. And then depending on what your account looks like, she may actually be a good boost as a burst 2 unit there. Who's on a 20-second cooldown, which helps keep you in the rotation, boosting damage, having some survivability as well, in terms of being a defender class. Aesthetically wise, I think she looks great. They're also, as part of this year and a half anniversary, you get one free poll per day on her banner. So that's ultimately going to be 21 free polls. They're giving out plenty of advanced recruitment vouchers, which are the equivalent to wishes on the limited banner, as opposed to standard wishes, to use Genshin jargon there for our Genshin players. So they're giving out, I think, 86 polls, and that doesn't even include the 20 that they gave out as a result of the live stream reaching, I think, 50,000 viewers, which was last week. You can still log in and get those. They've also got 2 battle passes going on, which have 2 skins, which the battle passes, I think, are like 15 or 20 bucks. Usually gives you about 20 pulls plus the skin and then a bunch of growth materials. And then they did bring out a new costume gotcha for a new skin for Moderni, who's a very strong character, which these skins are a bit more expensive if you're going for those, because it's ultimately, if you have the worst luck and you go all the way to hard pity on the gotcha for the costume, it's $60. Granted, for the year and a half anniversary, they're discounting it roughly to $55 because they give you some additional pulls for free, as opposed to generally just one pull on that type of banner. But that being said, the skin does have more production value put into it, as its own voice lines, its own skill cutscene, and it ultimately looks better than the battle pass skins. But at the end of the day, it is a $60 investment if you have the worst luck, as opposed to the $15 or $20 battle pass skins. But if you are interested in that, by all means, shoot for it, because it does look great. They're also giving away free SSR, a new SSR unit, Kilo, upon logging in for the first time, and then you will get multiple copies of her, I think, throughout the event as well. So that way, if you are a newer account, it can help you break that dreaded level 160 wall that so many people complain about. Me as a day one player, that wall is well beyond me, but the character still is fun. It's a character. She's the Nikkei that's actually in a mech, so it's a robot girl in a robot. It's the inception of Nikkeis, as it were. But the new mini event is fully voiced, and it's been pretty enjoyable thus far. So if you're interested in trying out or starting Nikkei, I know we've talked about it in the past, now would be a great time with all the free goodies they are giving out over the course of the anniversary. Now, that's enough about things happening this week. I want to talk about things that are upcoming next month. Steve, I want to throw it to you. Wuthering Waves is on the way at the end of May. We're about a month out from launch. And then we also got a little bit of a pre-registration in the Apple Store for Zenless Zone Zero, estimated release July 3rd, which was news this week. But what are we thinking? What do you got for me?
That is important news. If you are interested in either of those games, please go out, pre-register. But what I wanted to bring to the table here is an observation that I saw, that when they announced that ZZZ, I'm just going to call it ZZZ, had a rough release date of July 3rd, they got 30 million pre-registrations come out to that game. Wuthering Waves, who's coming out in a month, is currently sitting at about 20 million registrations. And what I found interesting was I feel like Wuthering Waves is maybe gambling a little bit too much, because when you go to their pre-registration page, they have multiple tiers of what you can get as part of the pre-registration rewards. If enough people pre-register, they will give out big nice rewards. We've currently broken the 20 million threshold, and now there's a 30 million threshold to complete, and then there's a 50 million. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Dave, because I feel like Wuthering Waves is perhaps overbanking on what they're going to get pre-registration wise, especially because they're putting 20 free pools behind the 50 million marker. That's not an unreasonable amount of free pools that I don't think anyone's going to see, because I don't think they're going to hit that number. But what are your thoughts, Dave?
So I had seen the news today about Wuthering Waves hitting 20 million pre-reg for next month. I had not seen that Zenless Zone Zero jumped to the 30 already upon being put on the App Store. As far as the threshold for the 50 million and hiding 23 polls behind it, history has shown in my observation, and this might be a little bit of a tinfoil hat area, so get your conspiracy theory ready, right? That I don't think that it's going to be a problem if they don't get 50 million. I think they will still either incorporate and give us the rewards anyway. They'll figure out a way to do it. Hey, number one in the Google App Store or whatever, here's those 23 polls, but they won't advertise this. Here's those 23. It's just here's 20, here's 20 polls or whatever. So they'll find a way to compensate and give that to us in another way if we don't hit 50 million. And then the conspiracy side of me is that we're going to hit 50 million because they will artificially inflate those numbers through bots or whatever have you. Because I think there's a potential in the industry. I don't know enough behind the scenes stuff that goes on, but I know that for Twitch streamers, view botting is a thing. Mm-hmm. So I don't see why that wouldn't be a thing for a gaming marketing company and developer to artificially inflate the number of pre-registrations to make the game more popular than it maybe really is, or gets more mentions on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now. So that's the little conspiracy hat theory guy in me. Is I think we'll hit 50 million, whether it be artificially or natural. I don't know. Don't particularly care, because I think the game will overall be successful, maintain a player base. It's just a question of, is it going to be bigger than Genshin or not? And that's a completely another debate we can have at another time. But for all intents and purposes, I think we'll get those rewards.
Yeah, and in that case, I'm not really, to a certain degree, talking about the rewards. That's the carrot on the stick. What I find interesting about it is that Honkai, their max rewards were set at 10 million pre-registers. 50 million's a big number. That's a real big number for you to set. So it makes me curious I don't want to say what Kuro is thinking, but as a goalpost, that's an odd number. That's a very large number to set that I don't know, it has me scratching my head. Let me just put it that way. And I don't think that it's necessarily anything malicious on Kuro Gaming's part. I found it
either, to be clear.
I found it curious that they chose that number, and there's a part of me that's going, okay, they're trying to go big. They want to hit that 50 mil number because they can then sell it as, hey, we're bigger than Genshin. We've look at all the people who played, who pre-registered, etc. But looking at the market as it stands, I don't see how they could get that number without doing botting or double logging people or shenaniganery in that way.
And they may have something, numbers that they're seeing that they have access to that we, the general public, don't, that gives them insight into that. But yeah, I think, again, that they're shooting for that big number, because then when they ultimately hit it one way or the other, then they're able to promote it out that way. Now, again, a completely different discussion as far as, is it a good idea to really throw yourself against Genshin and market yourself as the Genshin killer, if that's what I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but that's what others have tried to do in the past. Or there was a whole Tower of Fantasy, which was it Tower of Fantasy's developers that actually marketed them as the Genshin killers, or was it the fan base that were just hating on Genshin, and then it became popular? to say, oh, it's the Genshin killer, right? When Tower Fantasy was a completely kind of different style of game, as it were, a true MMO as opposed to Genshin. Anyway, those are all discussions for another day. To your question, to your point, again, I'd have to go back and see what Kuro did when Punishing Gray Raven came out, because I don't remember what their pre-registration rewards were, or what their goals were, or what their targets were, rather, for that.
Mhm.
But most of these games that any developer or puts out there, these pre-registration rewards and the goals that they set for those, they're either going to put them at something they feel they can attain, or if it's looking like they're not attaining. Because I don't know how many times I'll scroll on Reddit and see this game launches tomorrow. The pre-reg rewards, we're missing like 3 million. We're going to find 3 million pre-regs in a day, and then magically the next day we've hit it,
Mhm.
type thing. I think we'll hit it. Or if they're not going to artificially inflate the numbers and if they naturally hit it, great, awesome, more power to them, because that's just more chatter, more people giving feedback and supporting the game. But if they don't artificially inflate the numbers and they don't hit that goal, again, I still think they're going to work those rewards in some other way to package and market it as a positive, not a negative of, we didn't hit this goal, you're not getting those rewards. But like I mentioned, oh, we're number one in the App Store for this day, or the highest reviewed game for this week. Here's 20 polls type thing as a thank you.
Yeah.
PR is always going to spin it to a positive if they don't hit the goals.
Yeah, and it's budgeted out anyways.
Sure.
They know what they're doing on that side. But again, I found it interesting that they chose such a big number, especially when looking back historically, other mobile games that are of equivalent production value. Again, I'm looking at Honkai, I'm looking at Genshin itself, etc. They seem to be much more conservative with their numbers, whereas it seems like Kuro is just like, nah, we're going to the full 50 million. We're going to go 5 times that everybody else is asking for, and maybe because they think they'll get it, maybe because again they have a way to cook the book. I don't know.
You mentioned Zoneless Zone Zero or Zenless Zone Zero having 30 million, and yet they still have, we have until July on that. I thought that was interesting that we got that target date when we had like nothing before then. We just had like 2024, but we didn't know when exactly. So I thought that was interesting that we got that. And then the other thing that's important too, that we'll be sure to monitor not only with Wuthering Waves, but Zenless Zone Zero when it comes out, is yeah, you have all these pre-registrations, but then after that honeymoon phase ends, how many are returning for the daily loop or are continuing to play the game beyond it? So, like a month or two after launch, how many concurrent players do you still have going? Is it close to what that pre-registration number was? Have you lost half of your audience? Have you lost a third of it? Have you lost 3/4 of it, type thing? So that will be interesting as well, because I think Wuthering Waves, from what we've seen gameplay wise, is going to be a little bit more challenging in terms of combat,
Mm-hmm.
because they have, like we touched on earlier with beta, like with the perfect counter, right, and perfect dodges type stuff. They have those elements incorporated into it. And then for Zenless Zone Zero, we've seen a lot of the beta testing that was initially advertised as this huge action game similar to Honkai Impact the Third,
Mm-hmm.
or an action RPG in that regards. But there's also a lot of roguelike things in like the TV screens, and like going through those, spending your time in those menus, which may not be as appealing to folks that just want to dive into the action. So I'll be interested to see that in relation to the preregs versus how many folks are retained after X period of time.
Yeah, and I do think that's an interesting point to also bring up, is that in some ways Wuthering Waves it's going to be having direct competition coming out very shortly after. I don't think that they are. I mean, they're obviously not the same game. Wuthering Waves is a open world action RPG, whereas ZZZ is not looking to be going that direction. It is going to be an action RPG, but probably with more roguelite elements. But it's still the 800-pound gorilla that's going to be entering the room. So I am going to be curious to see what their numbers do in and around that time period. I also mentioned on the Discord, when you mentioned the release date coming up, I do, the summer release of ZZZ wasn't too big of a surprise to me, because I feel like Hoyo really has the capacity for maybe 4 ongoing games, where you have in the spring season, Honkai Star Rail comes out, summer they can now do ZZZ, fall is Genshin, and I honestly don't know about Honkai Impact Third, whether they fill a winter slot, or if that's a slot that's still open for
I
all
think they
intents
just
and
did a big
purposes.
overhaul like a month ago. I remember seeing a big trailer overhaul on the UI and everything for Honkai Impact Third. But yeah, that's the Hoyoverse game I'm least familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you had to ask me like right now what my prediction was for Wuthering Waves, I think that it will be similar to Punishing Gray Raven in the fact it will be a well-polished game. I think the harder combat will lead its audience to it won't be as casual friendly as maybe Genshin is, but it will still be successful.
Mhm.
But much like Punishing Gray Raven, that fan base is they're very passionate about their game and min-maxing things and getting into the minutia of it, but it's relatively niche in terms of the gacha landscape. So I think Wuthering Waves will be bigger than Punishing Gray Raven, but it will ultimately, and again, it will be ultimately, I think, be a good game, well done, have great support, and have a long life. But I don't think it will reach the pinnacle that Genshin was to be quote unquote that Genshin killer. Will it put a dent in some of Genshin's player base? Probably, because there are those that are dying for and hungering for a bigger challenge in combat. And then there are those that also argue for more end-game content, right? And I think that we may be seeing that more in Withering Waves. So that's my prediction right now as far as what we know. That's obviously subject to change as we learn new information in the next month. But if this is how it played out, wouldn't be surprising. And I think most people would be pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Regardless, we do want to encourage everyone out there, if you are interested in either of these games, there's no harm in going out and pre-registering, taking an interest, looking into it. They both look like they could be very fun and enjoyable. We're not married to either of them. We're going to take them as they come, or at least, Dave, are you married to either of them?
Yeah, as far as I'm gonna play them both, but as far as keeping them long term, we'll see. Because you can only juggle so many gotchas, especially ones that require a lot of active investment in it. But I think, and I know we're gonna, I think, work on planning something out for Wuthering Waves' launch, and then ultimately Zenless Zone Zero's, or maybe we have an event going on where everybody can play together in the Discord and be discussing our stuff, or we'll definitely have some reaction videos to our initial experience at the very least for you guys to catch. But we'll definitely be interested for those that are trying it out to get their feedback too. So be sure to jump into our Discord for that discussion and other news. If you did enjoy this episode, be sure to leave us a comment, follow, subscribe to the channel. We do want to thank you guys for joining us this week. Let us know down below what your favorite characters or maybe some of your least favorite characters in Genshin are and why you like them or why you don't like them. You can also email us at brohoyopod@gmail.com with suggestions or if you have any questions for the show. Again, we have the link in the Discord down below too, so be sure to join us over there for any news updates, content notifications, and game nights that we'll be doing here in various games. Join us next week when we discuss power creep, what that means, how prevalent it is in our gacha games. But until then, keep gaming.
We made a choice, go fight against your fate. Pain will come with the blade. Pain will wake up the despondent crowd in this storming world somehow. Unsheath the sword not to kill. Unsheath the sword to end. Clouds above the ground. Wake up, it's time to gather now. We have nowhere